the fact that a lot of people say that women don't like to feel rejected, but men don't like to feel judged.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of the Let's Rap podcast. I am your host, Jay.ecko.
Yo, what's up, everybody? This is Philosophical, your other co-host.
And today we touched on it in our previous episode. Well, it was last episode was kind of a rant on my end, but we touched on it a little bit. So today we wanted to discuss toxic masculinity. You know, how it affects us in our personal lives and our relationships and just in general. You know, and so to that point, I wanted to start with a general definition of what toxic masculinity is. So, you know, just doing a little bit of Googling. Toxic masculinity is defined in the social sciences as the traditional cultural masculine norms that can be harmful to men, women, and society overall. So, Phil, what are your initial thoughts on this?
So I think toxic masculinity and what I call a little bit of self-sabotage
Yep.
play some roles in this because, you know, at the end of the day, we're all humans. Nobody is perfect. But we got to be self-aware and realize some of the things we do. And sometimes, in my case, that some of the same behaviors that we do, it comes a time when you're dealing with certain people, men and women, certain individuals. If you really want to be with this person, if you really want to engage and get to know this person on a serious level, that some behaviors and patterns that you used to do will not work within dealing with certain people. That could be what I call deal breakers or a turn off, or it could be it can present, like we're discussing now, a toxic behavior towards someone. It becomes behaviors and patterns because at the end of the day, yeah, I will say that some of these actions and behaviors we may not understand or realize we're doing it until we have what's called a conversation. And through our discussion a couple of weeks ago, a couple episodes ago, we kind of talked about this, that, you know, at the forefront of relationships becomes communication. You got to have communication on some of this because if not, you're going to continue to go through the same behaviors and patterns throughout life.
Yeah. Um, on my side, I would agree, but I also think on top of that, it deals with because we're talking about toxic masculinity, period, and oftentimes, like you said, it's self-sabotage. We're the ones perpetuating these things, you know.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you out with your homies and your homies will say something mad reckless, but because it's the homie and you don't want to look soft or whatever foolishness you have in your head. I mean, and you know what, let me not even say foolishness because I know I've fallen prey to it on numerous occasions, you know.
Sometimes those conversations and foolishnesses are things people believe in. They believe in that. That's what they
Exactly.
think. You know, we characterize it as an opinion, but some people believe in that.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
like for instance, like some of the some like we'll even take it back to last week's episode. You know, we were talking about Russell Wilson and Sierra, how people believe he's a simp now because he's afraid of losing his wife. You know, that's a belief that a lot of people actually hold. Like, oh, you shouldn't be out here putting that out to the world. That makes you soft. And it's like, yo, I
yeah,
mean, Russell Wilson is comfortable enough with himself and with his situation to not care what other people think. He's secure enough in his manhood that it doesn't matter what other people say or think about him because he knows who he is and he knows exactly what he wants in his situation.
Yeah.
And because of that, he can rise above, or I hope he can anyways. Like we said last week, I'm not in his house, I'm not in his situation, but he can stay above that sort of stuff. Like he doesn't have to respond to all of it. Like what's it called? Like the next thing I heard about Russell Wilson was like he was on social media with his wife again, talking about what's it called, weaning his kids off breast milk or something like that. Like he doesn't care. but, but you know, we on the outside looking in, and you know, I'll put myself in this like last week because this type of stuff generally irritates me, and that's sort of why last week was a little less coherent on my part. But
I think it seems like every 5 episodes we have a rant, and I guess last week was your turn. The first episode was my coming of age rant, and I guess the people can expect a rant every 5 episodes. Like, hey, it's rant day.
but you know, like we said, we're trying to have real conversations with people, and sometimes when you're being real with people, you got to get pissed at people.
Yeah.
Like,
So let me ask you this:
mhm.
what are your thoughts on the what I call the initial interview stage? It seems to be very popular. Men and women want to know what they do as far as job stability, career wise. Like, why do you think that's such an importance? Like, is that an importance? Like, if if
um,
if, she, if he or she is a good man or woman, would you date somebody who is like a manager at CVS rather than being a entrepreneur that's doing well?
I
You
mean,
know,
I think well, taking it through the lens of this conversation, one, I think yes, it is important because you know, like I said in the initial discussion we had, like it's about your expectations and your standards. Like if you have specific standards and specific expectations, then you know, yes, you're gonna want to verify, like, oh, yo, who is this person? What am I looking for, and all of that sort of stuff.
yeah, but I do think people's standards and expectations are placed wrongly within
And
certain. Yeah,
that's the point where I'd say, like, bringing it back to this conversation, that's where things like toxic masculinity come into play because like
yeah, yeah.
you have this idea, this misplaced idea in your head about what a man should be. And I won't even just talk about toxic masculinity. Well, there's toxicity in how women believe they should present themselves at times as well.
Correct. And guys and men have a way of how they should present themselves by presenting themselves in a manner that
Oh
they
yeah,
make themselves higher than what they really are.
exactly. It permeates a lot of different things. But like for instance, there's for one big piece that I think goes to the communication thing you brought up first is like as men for a very long time we were told, oh, you shouldn't be talking about your feelings, you
Correct.
know,
Yeah.
and it's like, yo, and I'll even admit, like, I still have issues with it. Like, I don't like if I'm going through stuff, I don't want to tell nobody. Like, I'm not talking to people most
So
of the time.
what would it take? Because in some instances, not saying it's you, but that could be an example of toxic masculinity to a point where if you're not comfortable talking to someone, even to friends or even to a significant other, what I can say that as a trigger to the fact that you possibly haven't met the right one to bring that out of you, and that
Uh,
could be that
I
could be that could be your breakout.
I mean, I'd say I say the issue is twofold. Yes, it's toxic masculinity in that like I have this idea in my head, whether it's built up through society or I impose it on myself, however you want to call it. I have this idea in my head that I should deal with all this stuff on my own. I shouldn't share
Correct.
my pain
And
with
that's the way all
because it
men
makes
are
me weak
programmed.
or it
Yeah,
makes me look weak or vulnerable. And I don't
yeah,
want to look like
yeah.
that, right?
And that's what sets a good your partner, man or woman, apart from the others. That's one of the examples.
Yeah,
If you're with a
someone you
person,
feel
yeah,
comfortable talking to. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a big thing.
yeah, yeah.
And like what's it called? So you asked me about like careers and initial interviews. Like I'll say like even in it can manifest even in your career in ways like, oh, I don't know something and I don't like, but I'm not willing to admit that to other people. So because I'm for because I'm ego tripping basically, I end up doing harm to the people who are literally there to just get a job done, right?
So do you think that is kind of a scenario where, because I think as men, man, even myself, even the nicest guy, the meanest guy, I do feel like we as men, we got a lot of thoughts in our mind.
Yeah, we do.
Because if we feel, I think when you said that, you feel like, you've been programmed to kind of take care of things on your own. I think it breaks down to the fact that a lot of people say that women don't like to feel rejected, but men don't like to feel judged.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like for there's been a movement for a while like, oh, women are emotional and men we handle our stuff. It's like, nah, it's not that we handle our stuff, it's that we don't share our stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and
Like
and that's and that's what's made this podcast, allowing men to
exactly.
talk. Yeah,
Like we have just as many emotions as women do. It's just we don't share them. And because we don't share them, there's this, wall of mysticism surrounding it where it's like, oh, we're just this monolithic, quiet, we handle stuff. It's just like, nah, if you genuinely go out and you take a look at the real world where people are trying to do things in a healthy way, like they'll have conversations, they'll talk to each other, they'll discuss their problems and their issues. And one of the places where I think this manifests a lot, and I can say this because I'm part of it, is in the Black community. Like
yeah.
how many black men do you know like, oh, don't do that, homie, that's soft, we don't talk about. And it's like, bruh, if you're going through something, tell people you're going through something. You might be surprised at how much empathy or sympathy you can get. Like, now I understand if you're in like a rough life or something like that, then you don't expect that. but but
I disagree with that, because even if you're in that type of rough life, I do feel like I do feel like men only talk to other men where they feel like they can talk to other men when they feel the situation is relatable, and that's where that mold has got to be broken.
but one thing that I'll say is that we'll only feel like the situation is relatable if men start sharing their situations.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not even about being soft. It's not even about being vulnerable. But I think there will be a better understanding of what we as men want if you would just give us the opportunity to, no judgment, no type of like, oh, he's soft, he's this, not even about losing power, but it's all about having an understanding to what we have to say too.
Yeah, well, I
You know?
believe, and I think, and this goes back to my personal responsibility thing, like we have to give each other that room though.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I can have this conversation with you is because I know I have the space in this conversation to do stuff like this. It goes back to a couple episodes ago, we were talking about what does a safe, uh, what's it called? How do you how do you feel safe in conversations and stuff like that? It's like
Yeah.
because we've had talks before, because we've had discussions like this before, I know that I can have this talk with you. And if I'm not comfortable or something like that, I can just let you know, like, yo, I'm not like this ain't it right now. I'm not trying to have this conversation. And
So where do you put that stance? I mean, just thinking of type of situations, you know what I mean? Like they could be. You can't really do that on a first date. Can't do that in an interview. You can't really do that if you're trying to get to know someone. I mean,
I mean,
like
I
it's
I I I agree, but I also feel like there are sometimes you do have to like baby step through. Like for instance, if I'm on a date,
uh-huh.
the first question you ask me should not be something super personal like, oh, uh
And it's funny you mentioned that because we're gonna speak about that on the next episode.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the first question you ask me shouldn't be like I sit down at the table, it's like, oh, yo, how you doing? Yo, how are you? So what are your thoughts on what's it called? What are your thoughts on a dom sub relationship? And it's just like, yo,
Well, I
I
mean,
literally I ain't even ordered drinks yet. Like, chill it out.
if you get
Like,
that,
what?
if you get that type of questions, then um,
Like,
I would
that's
hope.
not that's not the space for, like, you haven't created space for that. Now, like, if we're sitting down, for instance, and it's like, yeah, how you doing? And then the conversation gradually turns to that place, then if it's like, oh, what are your thoughts on the dom sub relationship? And you're just like, look, man, I'm not really a sub. It's cool for those who are with it, but I'm not. There's a natural transition through that conversation, basically.
I'm wondering what type of dates you've been on.
Like, hey, what I like when I say I talk on dates, well, let me not say that. When I say if I'm in the right frame of mind, the conversation on dates be going very different places. It be going very different places.
So why is it that you feel like you can talk all day on a date, but when it comes to anything outside of a date, you don't feel real comfortable?
No,
What's the
it's not that I can talk all day on a date. It's how comfortable I am in that situation.
in that situation? So what? So what is it? Is it in a situation or is it that person? What would you gauge that?
I'd say it's a combination of both.
Okay.
Because like
So what if you're in the right situation but wrong person?
if I'm in the right situation, wrong person, then yeah, I'll have a conversation, but I'll know like I can gauge like, yo, you're cool. Yeah, like there was this time I went on a date with somebody and she was cool peoples. I've forgotten her name because it's been a while, but like she was cool peoples. Like we had a decent conversation. Like went shopping afterwards and stuff like that. But you know, through the course of the actual like our interactions afterward, it was just like, yeah, this ain't I can recognize and understand that this probably isn't going to turn into a relationship. And we just went our separate ways and it was cool like that. But,
Mm.
there was also like I've also been in situations where I literally went in with zero expectations. Like oh yo, I'm just going out to hang with this person, and then we literally sit and talk for like 4 or 5 hours without realizing it, and it's just like, yo, this could actually turn into something. But you know the that's why I say I feel like it's a combination of your state of mind and your and the person you're with, because like me, like I said, when I've gone into situations without any expectations,
Mm-hmm.
for me that means I'm in the situation and I'm not overly thinking things, because I'm not trying to get to some arbitrary objective,
Okay.
like I'm not looking for I'm looking to get to know a full person, as opposed to judging every single part of them for like relationship material or whatever the case may be, right? And
Okay.
that puts me in a frame of mind to be more open to like just putting myself out there and everything like that, because I have no expectations at this point. I'm just
But
trying to get to know.
that's the criteria sometimes it takes to get the so-called quote unquote the girl. But sometimes the quote unquote the girl that we're trying to impress, where the expectations and standards we've put in ourselves, and when we look across the table at this person, it's like we're valuing her at the wrong steps. We
Yeah,
value other things other than the things we're supposed to value her for.
exactly.
Like the first thing you always hear is that, man, she's fine. Dang, she's fine. And
Yep.
then it gets to a point where like, man, I wonder how she is in the bedroom.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And it becomes a point where like the emphasis is changed solely on the way she looks, the way she dresses. Yeah, that's important. But, you know, can you have a conversation with her?
Yeah. And
Can can yeah, can she add something into your life that you're missing? You know
yep.
what I mean? Because sex to me is like, I mean, yeah, I'm a little older. When I was younger, man, sex was just sex. Now, sex is like, it's something that it's like it becomes something in the point where
There are more stakes.
it's more stakes now, because sex to me is like you're infusing feelings and emotions. When I was in my 20s, like it was no such thing.
Of course not.
You know what I mean? But now you've got to really gauge, can I talk to this person? Is this person going to accept me for who I am? Just as much as men, we
Mhm.
got to accept, what can she bring to the table? What can he bring to the table? What type of conversation can you have? You know what I mean? But a lot of times, the situations are gauged off of what she looks like, where he or she works, how much money are you making, what do you do, how can you support me, how can you provide for me, how can you, I don't want to, I want you to make a decent amount of money so you can do this, so you can do that, and that's fine and good and everything, but it all goes to the point of, if you're taking somebody out, you gotta come to the realization of, if you're gonna be getting to know somebody, or even on a quest to be in a relationship with someone, and it's something you don't like for example, if you don't like where they work or what they're doing, that's a little bit shallow. You know what I mean? To the fact that if someone is working at a place for, I don't know, a year or two, and they love it, they love what they're doing, try to get an introspective result on why they like it, because you don't know. They could be a secretary at a doctor's office, or somebody who I don't know, stock shelves. A lot of times what a person does characterizes who they are inside, and as men and women, we got to come to the expectation and standard to realize that the type of person you are, and that person you're trying to deal with, understand who they are, because this is a person you have to deal with on an everyday basis. That's why you have to plant standards and expectations for that person you're dealing with, to the fact that these toxic behaviors, if they're constant and you guys are having a conversation, have a conversation up front, to know that, those are the type of conversations you have up front to say, okay, I've noticed this, I've noticed that. And what can we do to fix it? Because a lot of times, like we talked about before, the cancel culture, like, nah, I can't deal with this.
I mean, I think, well, I'll speak to a couple of the points you made. Well,
Okay.
in terms of fixing it, I think the best way to fix it is to what's it called? Communication is a big one, like a very big one. And I think it starts on our side, like
Okay.
us as dudes, like because one of the things you said that I want to address is like we go into a relationship and it starts with, oh, how fine is she, and and then we immediately move into what would the sex be like, stuff like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think part of that, yes, it's toxic masculinity, at its finest, but I also think that's part of like misogyny, like
Mm-hmm.
because we're going into the situation and we're not looking at the other person as a fully realized human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're only thinking of them in terms of their sexual aspects. Like, oh,
Okay.
how attractive is she? How what's it called? What would when how long until I can take her down or whatever the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's and that's society, that's conditioning, that's toxic masculinity, that's misogyny, that's a whole bunch of stuff, right? But to the other point you made about like our behaviors and things like that, that comes with self-reflection, like how you what's it called, how you treat other people. You have to recognize the impact that you are having on other people, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, and I feel like a lot of people, uh a lot of dudes specifically, haven't had to, like, or either haven't had to or refuse to acknowledge the impact that they have on other people. And I've fallen prey to this too, where it's just been like, yo, this is how I'm feeling right now. Forget everybody else. There's literally whole songs about, just doing your own thing. And it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but at a certain level, in taking that stance, you also have to acknowledge that you are deciding to not take anybody else's feelings, their thoughts, their their well-being into account. And there are ways to live a full life and to have a full and rich relationship while also taking care of your other person, which
Mm-hmm.
is why oftentimes when I'm talking about like relationships, I'll use the word partner instead of like girlfriend or whatever the case may be, because like, yo, when I get into a relationship, I know I'm getting into like I'm dealing with another person who has their own wants, their own likes, their own dreams, their own aspirations, their own dislikes, all of that sort of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I have to go in taking all of that into account. I can't just show up for the sex, which is part of the thing we discussed with like your expectations and your standards. Like if you're
Mm-hmm.
just going in there and the only thing you're expecting is sex, you're not going to look at the other person as a full human being and care about like, oh, how are you doing? What is your relationship like with your parents or all of it? You're not going to care because you're only there for the one thing, the sex.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's your take on some situations where potentially that could be the wrong reason why somebody, marries a person solely off the physical? Could that be categorized as toxic masculinity in your eyes? I think it could, because these are
I
patterns
think it
that
could, but go ahead.
I think these are patterns to where if you're willing to marry somebody just solely off the sex, I mean, how long does that last? How long? That could be a year, 2 years, 3 years. And you probably know from experience or even seen it with the movies and TV shows that people that are married just solely for the physical and sex, after 3, 4 years, they still don't know who this person is. And then right now, dealing with the issues we're having, being in the middle of a pandemic, you've got to be in the house with this person all the time.
Yeah, but I think part of that is I think part of that yeah, it is toxic masculinity. Let me start by saying that. But I think it's toxic masculinity in that it has largely to do with our ego at that point. You know,
Okay.
we're looking at the other person as a trophy or as an object,
Yes.
as
Yes.
opposed
Yes.
to like, oh, you are a fully realized person and everything. Because like, and oftentimes it's also based on the unrealistic standards that we've set for ourselves.
And
Like,
it's
oh,
good you said that, the trophy wife.
yeah, for instance, like, and I'm speaking about the black community again, like
Okay.
how we prioritize like, oh, the light skin, oh, I got me a light skinned woman or whatever the case may be, and there's colorism and internalized racism and all this other stuff in there as well. Like,
Hmm.
I don't want to pretend like that doesn't play a part, but the
Yeah.
fact that
Well, are you talking in regards to interracial relationships?
no, that's not what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay, okay.
I'm talking about like, you go to a relation, like, you because the world, as a black man, the world has told you, or your boys, or music or TV or whatever the case may be, has told you that, oh, the standard, the what's it called, the the peak in terms of what we should be striving towards in our in a partner is the light skinned woman or whatever the case may be. And
Mm,
people are
mm.
doing work to get rid of that now, but for a long time in like the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, to where they would only put certain type of women in TV shows and
Exactly,
movies.
things like
You know,
that.
and then what made it worse is the only way to get ahead is to marry a certain type of woman.
Exactly, things
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
And
yep.
we as like, and we have perpetuated that. Like, you'll what's it called, there have been what's it called, there have been dudes who have straight up said like, oh, I can't get with a dark skinned woman, like, she then my baby gonna be dark and I ain't, and it's like, yo,
And I think we've come to the realization that some of that is a little bit of preference.
some of it is
Some of it
preference.
is preference. Some of it is preference, and some
Okay,
of it
yeah.
is a little bit of. I've heard people say, like you said, I can't be with the dark skinned woman. We're gonna have dark skinned babies. But my next question is, would you be open to it if she had these criterias?
No, and
You,
that's where I say the toxic parts comes in, because
yes,
there are
yes,
dudes who will say no because she's too dark, and it's like, you are a dummy.
yeah,
like,
and that's just so shallow to me. That's so shallow to me.
exactly.
And it's so prevalent in men and women to where we're not going to date him because of the way he looks. We're not going to date him because of the skin color. We're not going to date him because he's not a doctor, lawyer, or he doesn't make a lot of money. And that's the toxic masculinity, because I look at relationships, dating, even marriage. When you're dating someone, you're dating them on the potential of who they are and the potential of who they can be.
Hmm.
A lot of times you have good happy endings to where you have marriages of maybe he became a millionaire
Hmm.
and you were right there by his side. what do you think is going to happen? I think those stories are a little bit more relevant and a little bit more show a sense of loyalty more than you. Oh, I'm a millionaire already, and then you weren't giving me a chance before. Now all of a sudden I got a lot of money. Here you are.
Oh no, like that, and that goes to the what's it called? That goes to a bunch of different things, but like, yeah, you could say it's loyalty, but there are just as many dudes who are like they were with their what's it called? They were with their woman on the way up, but then as soon as they got on, they leave their woman for somebody else, the quote unquote trophy wife at that point.
Yeah,
There's just as much disloyalty on all sides.
yeah,
But the reason why I wanted to discuss this is, like, a lot of these problems would be solved if we took a real good look at ourselves and how, again, you, like you said, we'll discuss it next episode, and examine the things that we as men actually want and actually need, not the things that other people tell us we want or should want, the unhealthy things that people tell us we should want,
yeah,
like, oh, you should strive to what's it called? You should strive to roll in a Benz. You should strive to live in $1 million house. You should strive to, like, if that's what you want to do, by all means do that. I have no issue with it. But if you're happy, if you're happy in a 2-room house, married with kids, living your life, by all means do that. That doesn't make you any less of a man. That doesn't
no,
make
that,
you, and in the same way that, like, if I achieve, millionaire status and I do have a Benz and I can travel all over the world, that doesn't make me any more of a man. Nobody
yeah,
can define manhood for you, and I think that's where the toxicity comes in, because we go around, and I know we need to label things. That's part of what makes us human, right?
yep,
Putting names to things helps us. But the fact that we're so we cling so hard to these outside definitions of what a thing is without defining it for ourselves.
I think it is like comparisons. I think it starts with the comparisons. We try to compare what other people have and try to put that within our lives to make it seem like, oh, well, that's the missing piece.
Mhm.
Neglecting the fact that you don't know how those two people met. You don't know what they're going through. You know what I mean? You don't know the foundation they've built. You know what I mean? All of that.
And the only way to really figure out what your missing piece is to learn about yourself, to do that work on yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So, these are my final thoughts as far as, toxic masculinity. You know, a lot of it, in my opinion, and this is strictly my opinion, toxic masculinity is basically the behaviors and it's a mindset of doing the same things over and over and over again. And some facets of life, we've looked at it to the point where it may have worked, when you're by yourself or with friends, with parents, whoever it is. But come to an understanding that when you are with someone that you are supposed to be with, someone that is beneficial towards your life, that person is brought into your life for a reason. That some of those masculine, toxic masculine behaviors, it causes us to change our overall life to where, okay, I did this behavior because it resulted in this, or I acted in this way because I thought that it would bring me this result. And at the end of the day, all it takes is communication and awareness, standardize and bring expectations to what you're looking for and what you want. Like Jay said, if you want to ride around in the Benz, you want to play the ball of life, you want to put yourself in a situation that puts you in a higher class than everybody else, that's fine. That's good. You set a high expectation and standard for yourself. But just know that the type of man or woman that you want to be looking for, just don't loft those expectations and standards onto someone else because you never know how that person is. That's what develops toxic masculinity, to the fact that we place lofty expectations and standards onto someone that clearly may not be that type of person. So if you want to live this high baller life and this type of role that you want to play, that's your role. But look at it from an expectation to the fact that what you're looking for, go after it. But just know that at the end of the day, if you want to go after a woman that has the same expectations and standards, just know that the same issues could arrive. Always bring communication into the situation. Always bring faithfulness and loyalty and build a sense of partnership within a relationship. No matter what, that should be the top of your list as far as standards. Not having a trophy wife, not thinking that, she's physically attractive or sexually attractive. I can make this work when you don't even have a clue or idea of who this person is. So that's my final thoughts. And, you know, I'll have a rant for you guys next week.
One of us will, regardless,
Yep.
So thank you guys for listening. You can find us at Let's Rap 2 on dang it, I don't forgot.
Twitter.
So it's Let's Rap _ on Instagram, Let's Rap on YouTube.
And also tell them your handles.
What's it called? Jay.ecko on IG.
Yeah. And it will also be connected to our Let's Rap podcast socials also. Getting that together. We got some other things coming down the pipeline. We got a good interview coming next week. We're setting up some more interviews. We really appreciate the support. We got a lot of things coming down the pipeline. We're going to try to do some live interviews and some live things coming down the pipeline. So we really appreciate everybody joining this journey. And I'm your co-host, Philosophical.
And I'm your host, Jay.ecko. Take it easy, y'all.
Peace.